So we noticed that this one kind of got a little messy, and also factoring does not always work. Take, for example, x squared minus 5 equals 0. I can't factor that. That's not the difference of squares. It's not factorable. So there's two things we can do when factoring doesn't work or when it's getting messy. And the first one is the square root property. And that's when we just have something squared and a number. So all we have to do is get the something squared by itself, and then just take the square root of both sides. Now remember, if you take the square root of both sides, don't forget that we have two options for answers. It could be a positive number or a negative number. So when I take the square root of both sides, I'm going to get x equals plus or minus the square root of 5. Plus or minus. You're still going to have two answers. Now let's see how we could get this one where it'd be easy to work with. Well, we would need the something squared all by itself, so we need to divide by 4. Now, square root both sides. Don't forget the plus or minus. And if I'm taking the square root of a fraction, I can really take the square root of the numerator over the square root of the denominator. I can break it up like that. It's okay. And so I end up with the square root of 5 over 2. And I threw this one in there because it could also work the same way. Now I could multiply it all out and all that, but if I have something squared equals a number, I can take the square root of both sides. Don't forget your plus or minus. So I end up with 3x minus 4 over here equals plus or minus 3. In other words, 3x minus 4 equals a positive 3, or 3x minus 4 equals a negative 3. I'm going to get two solutions. I'm going to add 4 over here and get a 7. So then I have x equals 7/3. Now some people will go, well then the other one must be negative 7/3. No, 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 no. You have to solve the equation. So if I add 4, I'll get 3x equals 1 and x equals 1/3. And that's my two solutions. Now I'm going to be honest with you, when we're dealing with real life problems, factoring, being able just to take the square roots, isn't always going to work. The one that always works is the quadratic formula. You should know this. If you don't know it by heart, I suggest watch some videos on the songs. There's a lot of songs out there to memorize it. But I really highly suggest either memorizing it or keeping it written down on the front of your notebook so that you can get to it really easy, because this one works on anything. Now we have to remember how the quadratic equation was set up. So the a is the coefficient of x squared, a and a. The b is the coefficient of x, and c is the constant. So 2x squared minus 3x minus 6 equals 0. So the a is 2, the b is negative 3, and the c is negative 6. So I would have x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4. A is 2, c is negative 6, and 2a. So I will get negative negative makes that positive. Negative 3 squared is 9. Then this is negative 4 times 2 times negative 6. That's going to be a positive 48. So 3 plus or minus the square root of, that's what, 57? I still technically have two answers. We have one with the plus and one with the minus. Let's do another practice with that quadratic formula. Now there's something wrong with this equation because it's not set equal to 0. So I need to move these to the other side. That's going to make it a negative x plus 1 equals 0. So my a on this one is 1 because there's nothing written in front of x squared. That's an understood 1. B is negative 1 and c is 1. Now, just so you know, even if something was factorable, you can use the quadratic formula. And it says negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Uh-oh. 1 minus 4. That gives me a negative number. Now, in college algebra, we would turn that into an imaginary answer. 1 plus or minus the square root of 3i over 2. When we're talking about real life situations, an imaginary solution is not a real solution. So it won't happen in real life. It only happens in theoretical algebra. So sometimes it's helpful to be able to know if we're going to have real solutions or not. And one of the things that can be used to figure that out is this part that's under the square root. Because when that's negative, I'm not going to have a real solution. So you may have seen before that the discriminant, the part that's under the square root, will tell you how many solutions you have. If the part under the square root is positive, you're going to have two answers. If it's 0, one answer. If it's negative, you're going to have no real solutions. It's actually going to be two imaginary. So let's take a look at this. We have the function b describes the Social Security Trust Fund balance in millions of dollars. Let me zoom out a little bit. Oh, I zoomed out a lot. Hold on. Where t is the number of years past the year 2000. For planning purposes, it is important to know when the trust fund balance will be 0. So we need to solve this. Would you really want to factor that? Me neither. So we'll talk about how we can use the calculator to solve this. So this is solving for t this time, not x. So this is t equals negative b, so negative 312, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Oops, 0.97. Now personally, I wouldn't go through all the work of simplifying it myself. I know I'm going to have two answers. I've got to go through it once with a plus and once with a minus. So let's see. I'm going to use my calculator. So let me clear this out. If you're working with an updated TI-84, If you press alpha y equals, that gives you a fraction. Negative 312. I'm going to go with plus the first time. The square root of. Keep the parentheses just like you have it in your problem. And make sure when you're pressing negative, that's negative down here at the bottom. That's minus. Two different things. Okay, so one option is, what is this? 1.17. But we're really interested in like future balances. That's only like 1 year later. So we want to know when else will it happen. So I'm going to go and see what I get. So I up arrowed to the history, and you can copy paste and just whoops, I went too far. Go arrow over, unless you really want to retype the whole thing, and replace that plus with a minus. And so the other time is 37.97, which makes much more sense. So the trust fund balance is projected to reach 0, and that's 37.97 years past 2000. So that's really what year, oh, it's not the years past 2000, wasn't it? Okay, yeah, so that would be the year 2038.